Welcome back. You're watching Young Turks. We're in conversation with the founder of PhonePe, Nigam, on the growth ahead. Samir, I want to understand from you, you talked about consolidation, but you also gave us the example of the telecom sector. Effectively, we're down to four players in the telecom sector in India today. So what could that potentially mean then when we talk about the fintech landscape over the next 5 years?
I think, again, I think fintech's too broad, but if you look at sectors like digital payments, acquiring, insurance distribution, if you look at each individual sort of sub-industry, I think consolidation is inevitable. The larger the market, the more capital and the more entrepreneurs will chase it. But there's a market life cycle, and we saw this in telecom at its very best. We had 15, 20 of the world's biggest names, domestic names, but eventually service does come into play. And I think in our world, product affinity or app affinity will come into play very quickly as well. It's the nature of the internet economy. I keep telling people this, I keep breaking hearts, but if a user can try out a service by downloading an app, which takes 10 seconds, people will try every service. People who use PhonePe also use a Google Pay, also use a Paytm, they've tried 20 other apps. And at some point, people will just gravitate towards whatever experience suits them best or they like the most. That doesn't take very much time in the digital world. It takes less time than the physical world. So I think consolidation is inevitable. It has to happen.
Yeah, and it is the rule of three that we see playing out across sectors, and that still holds true. But Samir, you talked about CapEx, and we're also talking about your fundraise, and you spoke about the kind of investments that you will require now with Pincode. But what would CapEx look like at this point in time for you over the next 5 years, given the investments that you've already made, but also anticipating the new verticals that you intend to grow out?
5 years is tough because I think it's almost linear to the growth of digital payments. I think Pincode and all other services combined take up a sliver of the infrastructure compared to payments just because of sheer volume. I wish 150 million people were buying insurance from us every day. My response to your IPO question would have been yesterday. But I think if payments really does get to 1 billion people in 5 years, we will probably end up spending just by ourselves somewhere between $500 million to $1 billion in additional capital in the next 5 to 7 years. My current guess is somewhere between. My current guess is over 5 years is another $500 million. Yes, 4,000 crores or 5,000.
Okay, 4 or 5,000 crores. And I want to come back now to the ONDC plan, because what does it feel like? You're up against Flipkart. You've been separated at the hip, so to speak. But what does that feel like now as you go up against them?
I have answered this question in various different forums, both privately as well as publicly. I don't think we're going up against Flipkart because I think the value proposition, much is being made about ONDC sort of competing with Flipkart and Amazon. As you'll see with Pincode, we are not facilitating cross-state or even pan-India transactions. We don't believe a federated model will work with that. I can't set the expectation with a shopkeeper in Koramangala, Bangalore, that somebody sitting in Vasant Kunj in Delhi is going to be able to order items in real time and have them delivered by a logistics player I don't even know of. This is literally real-time network pulls. So I think Flipkart solves a very different problem extremely well. They have one of the most sophisticated supply chains in the country. They have one of the most sophisticated logistics companies in the country. And I think when people are looking for branded goods, or trying to buy a 50,000 rupee phone, I think they will actually go to a Flipkart or an Amazon. I think local market dynamics are very different. And here, I don't think anyone's really cracked hyperlocal in a meaningful way, not in grocery anyway. So we'll see. I'm sure there's areas where we'll end up competing a little bit. But for the most part, I think we're solving a different problem. We are trying to create a hyperlocal / quick commerce alternative that's inclusive.
Okay, an inclusive quick commerce model is what you're hoping to roll out. But, Samir, and I think the jury's still out on whether quick commerce is going to work profitably, and will it be sustainable? I wanted to understand your thoughts on that. You already spoke about the wafer-thin margins in this business. What's the take on quick commerce?
So I think there's a couple of things that are just totally flawed. The quick commerce model that is VC backed involves people price cutting or giving discounts, heavy discounts. And the margin is so thin. The average order, let's take an average order offline, it's about 300 rupees. Even if you're charging 18, 20%, 22%, you're barely making enough to cover the cost of discounting the logistics and then discounting on price. In ONDC, one of the things we liked about it is by design, you can't touch the price of the shopkeeper. I actually don't believe that model works in quick commerce at all, so I'm happy. We have no role to play in price. Second, I think COVID changed the paradigm where people would not pay for delivery to where people are used to paying for delivery, for fast food delivery, pharma, and other sectors. So again, I think we can operate on much smaller margins because we are not investing in the supply chain. And I think the businesses and the seller platforms can make money because they're not having to price discount aggressively. When I say inclusive, I'm actually saying, I think the landed cost to the customer may be 15, 20 rupees more than it is compared to today's quick commerce apps. But I think that this will be a much healthier ecosystem and therefore it will sustain, it won't be cyclical. I hope so.
Right. Right. You spoke about the course correction that we've seen in the ecosystem as companies now focus on profitability. Now, what we've also seen happen globally at this point in time is a significant shake-up with the large players cutting down on costs, letting go of people. And of course, the era of zero interest rates is over for the foreseeable future. What will be the implications of that for India, for the Indian startup ecosystem in the near term? We've already seen many of the edtech companies laying off and so on and so forth. Do you see that we're at the start of a painful cycle that we will see play out in India as well?
I think India saw, and unfortunately, but saw a bunch of correction during COVID, where people just had to actually downsize because a lot of the startups in India are still very nascent. The ecosystem is nascent and it's equity funded, not profit funded. I do think, however, it's very different than the large big tech platforms in the US doing massive layoffs worldwide. In part, honestly, as an entrepreneur, I find it a little obnoxious because these are very large, very profitable companies with very large ambitions. They're investing in the ambitions, but they're laying off the people. So I personally don't subscribe to it. I'm glad that the Indian founders are not following suit that way. I think as a market overall, also, I think we're a little more empathetic. I'm not for protectionism at all, but I also don't like sort of this perversion between record profits and record layoffs. I don't understand that one. I don't think India will do that.
Well, we certainly hope so. And I have to say that I tend to agree with you. At least I'm still yet to understand fully why we're seeing this play out, record profitability, and yet the kind of layoffs that we are seeing with these global tech companies. But before I let you go, Samir, I mean, you've been around, you've seen many cycles, you've built a sustainable business. To many startups who are watching and founders who are watching who haven't been on the rodeo for as long as you have, what would your advice be to them?
I think 23, 24 years into this sector, a couple of rules that have worked consistently. Culture trumps business cycles because you can ride out whether it's a COVID or it's market conditions. I think you can ride out bad market conditions if you're consistent in your culture. Don't let market cycles distort your culture in the down cycles. And I'll give you two live examples of where we've seen this work for us. COVID, when most people started laying off, we actually said we're not going to lay off anybody. We're super proud of the fact we've never done a layoff here. And the company reciprocates, because right after that, when everyone was saying, let's work from home forever, we told everyone, hey guys, we need you to come back into the office. That's when we had a collective best. And 98% of people are back in the office. So I think if you do right by people when the going is tough, everyone does right by the company and puts the collective before the individual. I know it's old school, but it still works, guys. And I think the second is you have to be able to say no to your investors, especially early stage, if you're feeling bullied to grow at any cost, because it's very high to fix your margins when the burn's at its peak. It's much easier to grow a little slower. And we've done that. I mean, people are talking about a market cap on UPI today, but fact of the matter is that nobody gave us a chance for the first 4 or 5 years, and we were still growing at the same rate. We've never had 1 year where somebody can say, oh, they broke out, or 1 year where they really did badly. It's a journey. And save your chips for when they matter the most.
Well, Samir, I have to say it's been a pleasure speaking with you. Thank you so much for not just talking to us about your plans with ONDC, but more importantly, taking us through what the landscape for the fintech business in India is likely to look like over the next few years, and also sharing the do's and don'ts that I hope entrepreneurs are listening to. But thanks very much for your time. Appreciate it, and we wish you and your team the very best of luck.
Thank you, Shireen. Pleasure.
Well, with that, it is time for us to wrap up this edition of Young Turks. From all of us here on the program, goodbye and many thanks for watching.